For me, I think it was that I finally realized that I was a food addict, that it was addiction, true addiction. I had spent my entire life addicted to food and not realizing it. Like I was always obsessed with food. What was I going to eat? Where was I going to eat? What were we going to have? While I was eating one meal, I was thinking about the next meal. And I mean, it was just an entire lifetime, just really obsessed with food.
Today, my special guest is Heide Corse. She is a walking recovery manifesto. Her clarity, conviction, and groundedness in abstinence are potent, and I wanted to tap into her wisdom, her mindset, and her experience so we can soak this all up. She's 55 years old. She's been food sober for 4 years with not one slip. She has been carnivore for the last 2 years. Here's my conversation with Heide Corse. Heidi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. You said it took 1,000 day ones before your final one. What do you think finally clicked the last time that hadn't clicked before?
For me, I think it was that I finally realized that I was a food addict, that it was addiction, true addiction. I had spent my entire life addicted to food and not realizing it. Like I was always obsessed with food. What was I going to eat? Where was I going to eat? What were we going to have? While I was eating one meal, I was thinking about the next meal. And I mean, it was just an entire lifetime, just really obsessed with food. And I thought there was something wrong with me, but I didn't know what was wrong with me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it didn't seem like anyone else around me was like me. Everyone else seemed to just like moderate their food, and I could never moderate my food. And I thought I had binge eating disorder. I even talked my doctor into giving me, I think it was Vyvanse was
Yeah.
indicated for binge eating
Hmm.
disorder. Like, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
talking probably 15 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And she prescribed it for me. I mean, it didn't do anything for me. I tried naltrexone at one point because that was supposed to help. That didn't do anything for me. I mean, I don't know. I just knew that there was not something was not right, but I didn't know what it was. And it wasn't until a few years ago when I came across Bitten Johnson, Vera Tarman, Joan Ifland,
Hmm.
and learned about food addiction that it was like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm a food addict. And I used to be a registered dietitian. And of course, what are we taught? Calories in, calories out, moderation. And
Hmm.
I mean, that's all I ever knew. And so this idea of abstaining from something like 100%, was really intimidating to me. And it wasn't something that I even considered ever. I remember looking into Overeaters Anonymous years ago, and probably even before computers were barely around. And it was something about like, that they would abstain from sugar or flour or things like that. And I remember thinking, oh, I could never do that. Like, because why would I want to do that? And once I learned that this was an addiction and that there are people that are moderators and there are people that are abstainers, I figured out that was my problem. Am an abstainer, needed to be an abstainer, and I had spent 50 plus years of my life trying to moderate and I couldn't. So once it clicked. And for me, that was it. It was like, all right, now I know what I need to do. And, that's not what I think people want to hear sometimes. I think they want to hear, like, I don't know what people want to hear, that there was something magical that I did or tried or whatever. It just finally got through my mind that it was an addiction and abstinence was the answer, period.
Was there a period where you were trying for abstinence and it felt like it wasn't working, or it just kind of was like immediately like you had read the works of the people that you said, like Bitten Johnson and Joan Iflin and Vera Tarman and so forth, and you're like, I need to do this, and then you were able to, or was there like periods of struggle, or like what was that? How was that journey?
Well, I'm going to back up and tell you a little my history.
Okay.
So, I have been a food addict my entire life. One of my first memories is my third birthday, and I was standing behind my birthday cake, and the look on my face, the excitement about this birthday cake says it all. And I had already run my finger along the back of that cake, along that scalloped edge of icing and already eaten a big fingerful of that frosting, icing, whatever you want to call it. I don't remember a time that I was not thinking about food or obsessed about food. I was a normal little kid. When I was 5 years old, I had to hang out with the neighbor girl, and she was 2 years older than me. I would have to go to her house after school, and she called me fat. And I wasn't fat, but it started me thinking I was fat. She was one of those little kids that was very, very lean. You know how some kids are
Mm,
really, really
yeah,
lean? You
yeah,
know, Nowadays there are unfortunately a lot of obese kids and overweight kids, and you can see lean kids and bigger kids. But back then, I mean, I'm 55 years old. I mean, 50 years ago, I was just a normal kid, and she was very, very lean. But she called me fat. Her sister bullied her. She bullied me. Hurt people, that whole thing. But at age 5, and I was a very shy, quiet kid, I took it very personally. And that basically set me up for literally the next 50 years of dieting, binge eating, disordered eating, body dysmorphia. I mean, it all started, I mean, I was 5 years old. I mean, but it started me thinking I was fat. And even though I wasn't, I was normal. So there goes, the next 50 years of eating, obsessed about food, liking food, wanting more, thinking about how I could get more, thinking about how I could sneak it, all of those things, and I don't know how much you want to hear. I guess I'm trying to answer your question to say that, it was a lifelong battle with food and binging. I even became a registered dietitian, because that's all I knew. It was a whole history of counting calories and reading every diet book and doing anything and everything that's ever been done. And, it was all I knew was basically dieting and calories. So what made sense? Oh, become a registered dietitian. So I became a registered dietitian. And you know what? It still didn't give me my answer, because what do they teach? They teach moderation. They
right.
teach calories in, calories out. They teach,
Mhm.
oh, everybody needs to eat, a variety of foods and eat the food pyramid or my plate or whatever, whatever it was at the time or it is now.
Yeah,
And it was always so hard for me. I mean, I could never do it. And to fast forward to like when I finally made the decision after like 1,000 day ones, and I learned that abstinence was going to be the answer. Well, I had failed so many times. I mean, I had gone to bed night after night after night, more than 1,000 times saying tomorrow's going to be different. Tomorrow
right,
I'm going to get on track. Tomorrow I'm not going to, I'm not going to eat this way again tomorrow. I'm not going to do this again tomorrow. Tomorrow, Monday, January 1st. I mean, you name it. I had,
right.
you know, like, and my story is just like so many other people's stories. It's the same, right? This is what we do.
Yeah, yeah,
And I had done that so many times that once I finally figured out that abstinence was going to be the answer. I guess I finally made it up in my mind that abstinence was going to be the answer, and that was my last day one. So, yes, I finally made up my mind and just did it, but
yeah.
also it took me a lifetime of failing, you know.
Yeah, like you had a lifetime, 50 years of moderation that hadn't been working. So by the time you got to learning about abstinence, you were so ready that you were able to embrace it because you knew the other path wasn't for you because you had
Yes,
had that
you
mindset.
said it right. I was so ready. I was ready for something different. And that saying, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
I just couldn't keep living that way anymore. I was so miserable and so tired of that, again, that shame and the self-loathing and the every night going to bed and again promising myself it was going to be different, tomorrow's going to be different. I was just, once it was just, enough was enough. So
Mhm. And so now, what are specific habits, boundaries, or ways of eating? Like, how do you keep your recovery strong? Like, what is it that helps you thrive right now and to stay and maintain your abstinence and feel so bold and determined I reached out to you because I was like, this girl's solid in her mindset. So what are the things that you do, whether this is related to food or just lifestyle, that help you to keep your recovery strong?
when I first started, my rules were no sugar, no flour, no alcohol, no grains. And when I very first started, I actually started working with Florence Christophers. It was funny because she asked me when we, first met, like, okay, so how long, what is the longest you've ever gone without having sugar? And I was kind of like, I've never gone without having sugar. Like, literally, I don't think every diet I'd ever been on, or Whole 30 or whatever it was, I still couldn't do it. Like, I never made it a day without having something I quote unquote shouldn't have. So when I first started, it was, again, no sugar, no flour, no grains, no alcohol. And that meant no sugar, no sugar sub, no honey, no dates, no sweet taste, none of that kind
Mhm.
of stuff.
Mhm.
It meant no flour, no garbanzo bean flour, no coconut flour, no almond flour,
Yeah.
no whole wheat flour, no oatmeal flour. It meant,
Right.
nothing that could be turned into, again, something that would be addictive for me. And in the beginning, that was enough for me. That, because those were the addictive foods for me. It was,
Mhm.
anything that you could make with, sugar, flour, fat. I mean,
Mhm.
it didn't, you could make something over time, and I was still eating vegetables. Um, Over time, that ended up evolving into carnivore for me. Now,
Mhm.
I heard about carnivore a long time ago, and I thought it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard, and I rolled my eyes at it, and I thought it was totally insane and stupid. But yet, there was something about it that fascinated me. I would hear Sean Baker talk, or Dr. Berry, or whoever, Anthony Chavy, or some of the people
Mhm.
that are big in the carnivore space, and it was kind of compelling. But also, it was kind of like, who would do that? Like, why would you do that? But that is where I ended up landing, partly because it is so easy. I just pretty much eat ribeye every day. I eat ground beef. I eat burger patties, sometimes, but it just makes it very, very easy for me because I can even overeat on the carnivore diet. Like, as
Mhm.
soon as I start letting in cheese or chicken thighs or this or that, or, people start recreate a carnivore bread of some sort, or
Mhm.
carnivore ice
Mhm.
cream, or, it's like, it lights up my brain again. It's like
Yeah.
right away, my brain is starting to think of, oh, I could have that, and I should eat this, and it's like there's no peace, there's no freedom. So when I pretty much eat the same thing every single day, now I love what I eat, and I look forward to what I eat very, very much. So it's not like I'm at all being like punished,
Yeah.
but it just makes it so easy. I'm not thinking about it all day long. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to wonder what I'm going to have. I don't need to be lit up by, like, oh, maybe I could have this or that. It just is so simple.
So you eat carnivore and you eat real food. So you do
Yeah.
not make like substitute treats like carnivore ice cream or carnivore bread or anything. You just tend to eat ribeye, ground beef, and what else did he say?
It's pretty much, you know what? I eat ribeye every single day. I have eaten a pound and a half of ribeye every single day for years now. Um,
That sounds
and
delicious. I eat a lot of ribeye too.
And people will say, oh, it's so expensive. It is expensive, but I buy on sale, and I buy the big primal ones that are vacuum sealed, and I cut them up myself, and I have multiple chest freezers in my house. My husband thinks I'm insane, but I get them on a deal, and they're down there for me. It's not that I don't think, I don't think vegetables are necessarily trying to kill you, like some carnivores might say that. I don't think there's anything wrong with vegetables. They just ultimately, for me, they just weren't really doing it for me anymore. And so it was like, why am I even bothering? And it was just easier to just eat the steak. And honestly, when I used to eat salads, I wasn't eating the salad to eat the salad. I was eating the salad to eat the cheese and the dressing and
Mhm.
the sweet and spicy nuts and the raisins and all the other junk that I was putting on the salad. So, way back when I was eating salad. So, would I still eat green beans occasionally, or some grilled zucchini squash or something like that? Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm totally opposed to it, but it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. So I just kind of keep it simple and eat my steak, and it makes me happy.
Mhm. Love it. Yeah, I'm totally the same way. When you're in situations where you're traveling or you're going to a social gathering or restaurants, for people maybe who are not so secure in their recovery, they're still trying to figure things out or they're looking for inspiration. Can you tell us, what are maybe some of the like a conversation you have with yourself or, just strategies that you have to manage these type of things that could be that could feel vulnerable for people who are, not quite as grounded in their strategies.
First of all, I think the most important thing is knowing what you can and cannot moderate, and I think that probably most of the people that listen to your podcast or your YouTube or are listening to this now have a pretty good idea of what foods just do not work for them. Maybe their ditch demon or their sugar dragon or whatever, their voice of sabotage, whatever you want to call it back there, might be telling them, yeah, well, maybe you can, or yeah, maybe you should, I think most of us have a really good idea at this point, like what we just don't need to be eating. Like, we don't need to be having the basket of bread at the restaurant or ordering the pasta or, the dessert, whatever it is. So I think one of the most important things is being very clear and honest with yourself about what are your foods, and what are not your foods. Because it's easy to talk ourselves into foods that are really not serving us and that we have binged on many, 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 many times. And we know exactly what it tastes like. We do not need to have it one more time, or the fact that we may miss out on something. We're not going to die without having the piece of wedding cake or something like that. As far as like dining out and stuff like that or traveling, just plan ahead. I mean, honestly, like depending on where we go, I mean, I bring my air fryer with. I bring my air fryer to hotels and I bring my steaks in my cooler and I make my steak. Or you could do burger patties, or you could do, whatever you're eating. I mean, pack a cooler, bring it with. I mean, I think that, pretty much anywhere you go nowadays, you can get the food that you need by being assertive, looking at menus before you go, knowing what the situation is going to be. I mean, if I'm invited to, I guess it depends on the situation. Let's pretend I'm invited to somebody's house and they, it's not somebody I know very well, and they serve lasagna and garlic bread, which is not my food. And, I will lie and I will say, oh, I have a lot of really bad food allergies or intolerances, and maybe I'd bring something with, or but there's always a way around it by saying, it just doesn't make me feel good, please do not feel bad, I didn't know what you were going to serve, or I had no idea, it's no big deal, this happens to me all the time, what, I ate something before I left, or I've got something when I get home. And as long as you reassure the person that it is no big deal, I think it's so easy to feel like, oh, we need to please that person, and like, oh, we don't want to feel awkward, we don't want to,
Hmm.
we don't want to look like the weirdo. I'm kind of over it. If I look like the weirdo, I look like the weirdo. I mean, I don't usually go around and tell people that I'm carnivore. I mean, I don't really tell anybody that I'm carnivore unless
Hmm.
we get into a conversation and I feel like maybe they'd be interested or it might benefit them or whatever. But, honestly, I don't feel like having that conversation with people. The other thing I was going to say is, I know a lot of people, like, depending on where they travel, they will literally go to Walmart or wherever and buy an air fryer. It's cheaper
Hmm.
for them to just buy an air fryer at Walmart and buy their
Hmm.
steaks or whatever their food is
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
eat it in the hotel room than it is to try to, like, I eat a lot. So going to buy that volume in a restaurant would get expensive. Even just
Right.
getting a plain burger
Right.
patty in a restaurant wouldn't be enough for me. And then they charge
Right.
you a ridiculous amount.
Right.
So,
Right.
I think a lot of, so a lot of people will just, they'll buy that cheap little air fryer and they'll just leave it at the hotel. Like if they had to fly somewhere or they,
Right.
type of situation. But, carnivore or not carnivore, what, however you're eating, it's just like whole food. You have a lot of control by planning ahead, again, packing the
Hmm.
cooler, being specific about what you want and don't want when you're ordering off of a menu. And like, yeah, we just said, eating at somebody else's house, I won't eat, like if I like the lasagna and garlic bread situation, like if, that I would sit there and just not eat if I had to. And then,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting in our culture how Well, in so many cultures that it's like so important what someone else is eating. I just kind of feel like it's like, well, we can everyone just do their own thing and let's mind their own business.
Yeah.
Like I used to do competitive bodybuilding, and so I would have my Tupperware at random times. And, like people are, we're all in a car and I bust out my Tupperware and I'm eating, and I don't know, and people commenting on the things that I'm eating. And like, I think that that was kind of the beginning of like this attitude of like, can you just let me live? I'll let you live, you let me live. Like, let's just pay attention to our own plate, like just this mutual respect. Even if they don't necessarily, approve of you eating all this meat, maybe you don't approve of them eating all their ultra processed food, but like, let's just respect each other and just like, let us all do our own thing. When I travel or go to other people's houses, I do very similar things. Like sometimes I generally try to go to Airbnbs that have kitchens if I'm doing like flying someplace, and then maybe my first stop will be the grocery store, and then I'll have all the food at the Airbnb so then I can cook it. Or if I'm going to an event, then similarly, I might eat something beforehand if I'm not sure what they have, just so that I am well nourished and satiated. So I'm not going there and I'm starving. Or sometimes if it's like a friend's sort of potluck, I might contribute something that I would eat. So then I could eat that and then share with other people. But yeah, there are a lot of strategies. And I think sometimes the awkward component is in the mind of the person, like I think maybe you and I, we've been doing this for long enough that we're just like, fuck it, like we're just, like it doesn't matter if we don't eat, then it's okay. We're gonna be sitting with our friends at the restaurant drinking water, sparkling water, and hanging out, having a good time. It doesn't phase us, right? But some
Yeah.
people who maybe a little bit more newer to this style might be like, what? Like, oh my God, I feel so awkward. But that's kind of like a mindset thing that they might need to shift, that really it actually is okay. And if people don't really make it a big deal, or they're gonna accept you if they're your true friend or family member, they will get used to it and just be like, that's totally fine.
And also, sometimes you might just have to say no to going to certain events in the beginning, like
Right.
like you said, like, okay, we've been doing this for a while, so it's, not so hard. But yeah, in the beginning, it is hard. And it's also hard to put yourself in those positions where there's a lot of food where that's not your food. And
Right.
so, sometimes just saying no and knowing your boundaries and knowing like, yeah, that might not be a good situation for me to be in, that there's going to be too much food or too much pressure or too much alcohol or, or all of the above. Sometimes just staying in your abstinence in the beginning and kind of getting some time under your belt makes it so much easier later on. So,
Yeah, I 100% agree. Susan Pease Thompson, she created Bright Line Eating. She calls
mhm,
that bunny slippers, like that
yeah.
bunny slipper energy, like especially when we're feeling vulnerable at the start, definitely like making things as easy as possible for ourselves, whether that's making sure that we're going to the grocery store and having healthy food for us in the house, taking care of our physical body so that we can keep cravings low as possible, maybe saying no to these high risk situations at first until we get our footing a little bit more secure. Definitely, I think those things are a good idea at first. You sometimes talk about peace and freedom. Can you describe what that feels like in your body or mind? Like how the peace and the freedom that you experience now might be different than basically the struggle and the moderation, the attempt at moderation that you had been living for so long.
I didn't know there was such a thing as peace and freedom around food. Like I had no idea. Like I mean, I had lived my life obsessed with food. The idea that you could actually not be thinking about food 24/7 or I had no idea. So the peace and freedom for me is I don't even know how to explain it except that it's better than any binge food I ever ate. Isn't that like one of those sayings type of things? I honestly can't explain it. Once you finally get there and you have peace and freedom around food, you can't really explain it. It's just kind of like, oh my gosh, it's wonderful. I know that's not answering your question, but I don't really know how to explain it until I mean, until you finally get there and you realize like that it is possible. And it really, and I never would have thought it was possible that I would be this person that was not eating all of these sugary, floury, whatever
Mhm.
items. Like I
Mhm.
never, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have, never in a million years would I ever thought that I would be eating this way. And I don't just mean carnivore, I just mean free of sugar, flour, alcohol,
Yeah.
and grains. I never would have thought that was possible for me. It's pretty incredible.
Sounds like it's a whole different life. What are you able to devote more of your brain space to? If you aren't, since you're spending less of it sounds like before your brain was just constantly obsessed with food, and now finally it's like this new way of living. And so now, what are some of the things you've been able to embrace or bring into your life or focus on besides food?
I used to always joke and say, like, oh my gosh, I could have learned like 10 foreign languages in the amount of time that I spent either thinking about food or spent beating myself up at night, right? Beating myself
Yeah.
up for not going to do this again, do it again, tomorrow, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. I was saying all of that brain energy. Who knows what I could have done with my brain if I wouldn't have been, obsessed and thinking about all that all the time. But now it's like I think my new addiction is still podcasts and YouTubes on staying
Mhm.
abstinent, right?
Okay.
So it's like, what am I putting my brain energy towards? It's still, now it's more about, okay, now I have found this
Mm.
peace and freedom and I have found
Mhm.
how to do it, but now I still love listening and learning about it. So that's still what I'm doing. I haven't learned 10 other languages and I haven't gotten an MBA or anything like that. Unfortunately, I've taken some art classes, like pottery classes and watercolor and some glass fusion and things like that. And so that's kind of a nice thing to do that gets me out of my head completely. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, my space in my brain is now still devoted to now that I know the answer,
Hmm.
reinforcing the answer.
I love that. And that makes total sense. I know that a lot of people who have struggled for so long with food, and I do the same. I try to constantly fill my brain with positive and supportive messages. So I think that that's a good strategy, because for you, how many years has it been since you started with abstinence?
Four.
4 years. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds
Yeah.
like you've been filling it up and now you're here on the podcast sharing inspirational messages with others. So that's
So,
pretty.
and I also want to say something. So, when I say 4 years, and I'm not saying this to brag, but I feel good about it, I'm talking 4 years without slips, you know. Um, and the only reason I'm saying that is because there are a lot of people out there that say, oh, yeah, I've been keto for 3 years and I've been carnivore for, 5 years or, whatever, whatever. And then the more you talk to them, you realize that they have been in and out of the ditch many, 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 many times, which I get because I lived my life in and out of the ditch.
Right.
But so, like, I just kind of want to be clear that when I say abstinent, I've been abstinent. The eating the other stuff, it is no longer an option for me. Having one bite is not an option for me. Um, so again, I mean, I kind of am patting myself on the back because I'm proud of that. But I also want it to be clear because I think there are so many people out there that think it's not possible.
Mm,
They think, or they just, again, it's their ditch demon talking to them, talking them into the fact that like, oh, well, you don't need to be 100%. You don't need to be,
mm,
you don't need to be perfect. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at all, but um, well, you know what? I'm going to argue. I'm going to say, you know what? No, you do need to be abstinent. Just like if you're an alcoholic, you need to be abstinent. Or if you're a meth addict, you need to be abstinent. I'm sorry. I mean, addiction is addiction is addiction. And you know, the answer is abstinence. And so if you are still going in and out and having that bite or letting people talk you into it or letting your sugar dragon talk you into it, that's just excuses. There's no reason that we can't stay abstinent in my mind. And, knock on wood, because like in Dr. Lisa Wiederman's group, she always talks about how we're always just 2 feet away from the ditch. I mean, I realize it. I know. I mean, at any given moment, I could get up right after this podcast and my husband still has junk food in the house and I could go and eat some Oreos or have some ice cream, but it's not an option for me. So
I love that. That's such a strong mindset that you have. Someone who really wants to be abstinent but find themselves still struggling, like what would be, can you just say a few words on maybe what would be like the first few steps?
Um, first of all, I would say it's totally possible. Um, I never would have thought it was possible. And I would, say it does sound crazy and it does, and I would say you're going to grieve it. I mean, I did grieve it. And you know what? I will say on that last day one, that I knew was going to be my last day one. I mean, I did like everyone else. I had my big, huge binge before I did it, which I had done a million times. How many times have I had my last supper, right? Over and over and over, because I was never going to have those foods ever again. And then I did anyways a day or two or a week later. I would just say that it's totally possible that it takes work and effort and some planning, that it's not going to be easy, and it's not always easy. I mean, we live in a society where there's food and alcohol everywhere we go. Whether it's just there or it's on TV or it's on an advertisement, or I mean, you cannot get away from food and alcohol at all. Some people might argue, well, being a meth addict was easier because at least you're not around meth. And people will say, oh, you don't have to drink. Well, because I also turned into an alcoholic. That was the other thing that was really weird in my story was I never drank. I never drank in high school. I didn't drink in college. I was a goody two shoes. I like people who would see this now and say, oh my God, like they never would, I never saw it coming. I didn't live in with alcoholic people. I mean, I was not around it. And when I got married and lived in a very social neighborhood and people drank a lot and my friends drank and my husband drank and we started drinking. And wouldn't you know it, there's that addiction again. And within a number of years, I turned into an alcoholic. It was the craziest thing ever. And so, I had to learn to be abstinent from that too. But that's hard to get away from as well. You can't watch a TV show nowadays without somebody drinking a glass of wine or pouring a shot or doing whatever. So, anyways, I guess going back to answering that question is that, I mean, it's hard, but it's worth it and you can do it. I mean, I hate to say it, if I could do it, anyone can do it. But I mean, you probably feel the same way, right? I mean, it's like we did it, anyone, you can do it. If you want it, if you really want it, you can do it.
Heidi, thank you so much for sharing your incredible experience, your wisdom, and just like you have a just incredible mindset, and you've just developed all these strategies on how to stay abstinent no matter what, which is just completely impressive. If someone wants to email you, get in contact with you, is there an email address that people can contact you on?
Yeah, I'm not on any social media because I'm boring. But yeah, my email address is h.corse@comcast.net, and you can just link that. And I was going to say another thing, you know, part of this is learning how to just shut down the thoughts. There's a thing I think in counseling called stop thought. And it's like when things start, like I think there's a saying that says, you can't control the thoughts that come into your mind, but you can control whether or not you engage those thoughts.
Yes.
So, when you walk into the grocery store and you smell the bakery, or you walk through Home Depot and, oh, at the checkout counter, there happens to be Kit Kats or, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you can't stop that initial thought of like, ooh, that looks good, or that smells good, or, whatever it
Mhm.
is. But you can shut it down right then and there. And, that's something that I have had to learn. Like, people will talk about cravings and things like that. Like, I don't even allow cravings. Like, I just do not, I don't go there. I just shut it down. I don't think about it. I don't engage it. I don't, because I know it's not an option for me.
Right.
Having that one bite has led, well, has led me into the ditch a million times over my lifetime. And you
Yeah.
hear the stories over and over and over, about, well, I just thought I could have one bite, or I just thought it would, just this one time, or, well, it was a special holiday. And, we've heard the stories, it never works out that way. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to do this interview with you, is because when I was first getting abstinent, hearing the stories of people who actually did it, it was helpful. It was inspiring to me.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd be one of these people that would be able to share a story. And I'm glad that I am. But so I think part of it too is learning to not engage with, well, with your ditch demon or your sugar dragon or
Hmm.
your voice of
Hmm.
sabotage. It's like, it's just not negotiable. It's not, you just don't engage. So anyway, that might
I love
help.
that. No, it's super helpful. Yeah, not engaging with your thoughts, that's just an incredible skill. And it sounds like you have really you've done a good job at cultivating that skill over time. So thanks
Yeah.
for sharing that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for being here, Heidi. Everything you've shared has been super impactful. I'll share your email address in the episode description. And thanks again for sharing everything today.
I was glad to be here. And if anybody wants to email me, I would love to connect with somebody, and I'd be glad to help if I can. So thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.